Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our third Q&A session for this semester for the unit PG428, Foreign Policy in PNG. This afternoon, our topic 3, is on the private sector's role in foreign policy making in PNG. And once again, we have our sessional lecturer, Mr. Lawi Yako, here to guide us through the topic, share what he knows, and then we open the floor for discussion, Q&A after his presentation. Mr. Ako, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Gira, and good afternoon, everyone. Please, firstly, accept my apologies. I had to rush over from 12 p.m. engagement. I had to go. I had to go and talk with Peter Ilau, the former commander of the PNGDF, the naval guy. At last we're launching his book in October, November. So I'm story going. I'm to please 20 past 1. Me to please Ambassador Yunus me past them. And I rushed through the back road, the Paga Hill back road, only to front up with a huge traffic from Waterfront all the way to Coney. So I just rushed. I arrived about 5 minutes ago, and I rushed in. Start by was pestering Mr. Yagura for where the link was in Moodle. So I just located it. So we'll start. I'll share immediately when we start. Yes. Share. Okay, so that's our topic for today, as presented by, introduced by Mr. Yeager. It's the private sector in foreign policy making, influence, collaboration, and impact. So we all know that foreign policy making encompasses the lives of the whole population, which is why it is very critical for the population to be consulted. And the population can be easily grouped into various stakeholder groupings for any such consultation process to be carried out with the required outcome in mind. So one very important stakeholder in the formulation and implementation of a country's foreign policy, in addition to the academia, is the private sector. So we all have read and know that traditionally foreign policy was government-driven with minimal private sector input. Today, corporations engage actively by influencing economic diplomacy, participating in public-private initiatives, and shaping international regulations. Okay. Now, the private sector, like academia, is a major stakeholder in an economy's foreign policy formulation and implementation. It is not just confined to organizational boundaries, but it extends to global markets, cross-border trade, and international partnerships, which all play significant roles in shaping a nation's foreign policy with its bilateral partners. The private sector is not just about making money and profits. Its operations influence the global stage and intersect with international relations and foreign policy. For instance, strategic management, marketing, financial management, operations, supply chain management, human resource development, international business, and corporate governance all contribute to shaping both global markets and international diplomacy. Real-world examples will reveal just how interconnected this corporate governance, these business practices are with foreign policy, trade, and diplomacy. These two pictures you see above, courtesy of the Business Council of Papua New Guinea, permission was given for me to use these two pictures and a couple of others later in the slide presentation. These were taken at the recent 48th Australia PNG Business Forum in Port Moresby, held in June this year, under the theme of securing the future of investment, story Blongyumi, from shells to artificial intelligence. The communique of this, the outcome, the communique can be obtained from the Business Council website, which is www.bcpng.org.pg. I'll repeat, www.bcpng.org.pg. So you can see the private sector as a force multiplier. The private sector of both countries, business councils of both countries, bringing in their membership to talk about international trade and cooperation with government. So those are examples of how the private sector influences. Now we look at business coalitions engaging to influence policy. So again, this is another picture from the Business Council put up there with their kind permission. And you will realize that the private sector, especially multinational corporations, they have significant influence on international relations because of their global reach and economic power. Economic diplomacy and trade relations are often shaped by private sector activities like international trade, investment, and supply chain management. For example, the Silicon Valley tech giants like Google and Facebook have become critical players in shaping the US's digital trade policies, particularly during negotiations with the European Union over data privacy and regulation. The role of these tech companies in global markets demonstrates how private sector interests directly influence diplomatic strategies and trade agreements. Multinational corporations also drive global investment and innovation, impacting international economic policies. Industry associations represent collective business interests and help coordinate sector-wide strategies, just like the Business Council's engagement with its counterpart in Australia. Business coalitions combine resources to influence policy and foster collaborative innovation. Entrepreneurs play a key role by introducing innovative ideas and shaping market trends. Okay. Now, how the private sector exercises influence through foreign direct investments. Now, the picture up there is Mr. Doveri Henao, the executive director of the PNG Business Council before, talking with the chief secretary, Ambassador Ivan Pomali. And he's pitching an idea. So you see, this is private sector and government collaboration. So next, we explore how the private sector exercises influence on foreign policy through lobbying, partnerships with government, just like what we see in the picture, and leveraging economic diplomacy and trade relations. Collaborations between governments and private sector companies help address global challenges like infrastructure, security, and sustainable development, combining resources and expertise to achieve policy goals. Partnerships combine government authority with private sector innovation and resources to tackle complex challenges. When we are addressing global challenges, these collaborations focus on infrastructure, security, and sustainable developments to meet policy goals, just like the UN SDGs. When we are looking at resource and expertise sharing, the private sector and government, they pool resources and expertise together, enabling efficient project implementation and innovation. When we look at corporations actively shaping trade policies, we look at the private sector supporting market interests. The private sector supporting market interest and international strategies. Now, building global partnerships is crucial for corporations to foster trade relations and economic growth. Corporations contribute expertise in trade talks to align policies with their economic goals. No, that's a given. Foreign direct investments by private firms also has far-reaching effects on bilateral relations between host or let's say the recipient and the donor economy. For instance, the China's Belt and Road Initiative is a powerful example of this dynamic. Chinese companies have invested heavily in infrastructure projects across Asia, Africa, and Europe, expanding China's influence in these regions and prompting concerns in the West. Countries like India and Japan have responded by promoting alternative infrastructure projects, demonstrating how corporate investments can reshape the geopolitical landscape and influence foreign policy strategies. So we look at other examples of private sector, the private sector influence in foreign policy. Now you look at tech companies play a key role in shaping international data privacy regulations and protecting user information worldwide. You have cybersecurity firms impact cybersecurity policies that safeguard digital infrastructures from global threats and attacks. You have tech companies, again, influencing agreements governing secure and efficient cross-border data transfers among countries. Energy companies play a key role in international resource diplomacy, negotiating access to resources and impacting geopolitical stability through their investments and partnerships. They actively negotiate international resource access, influencing diplomatic relations worldwide. Investments and partnerships by energy companies significantly affect geopolitical stability and international relations. Pharmaceutical firms shape policies that affect global access to essential medicine and treatment availability. They influence intellectual property laws that impact drug pricing and innovations worldwide. These pharmaceutical companies also play a key role in international health programs and emergency response cooperation. Finally, large multinational corporations frequently set industry standards that become de facto global norms. For instance, Apple's data privacy policies have influenced international discussions on digital governance, forcing other tech firms to follow suit and impacting regulatory discussions in both the US and Europe. So when we look at how to balance national and corporate priorities, the picture says it. Consensus has been reached, the idea has been pitched, and the next steps will commence. So balancing national corporate priorities focuses on transparency, conflict of interest, and balancing national and corporate priorities. The lack of transparency, private sector influence, often happens behind closed doors, making decision-making process unclear and opaque. Corporate goals can sometimes oppose national or global priorities, causing tensions in policy decisions. Policies may favor business objectives at the expense of ethics and the public good, creating potential conflicts. There's many examples on that. We'll talk about examples later. Policy influences consents. Okay, so policy influences consents. The lack of accountability in private sector involvement erodes citizens' confidence in governance. When you look at the global nature of supply chain, means that private firms are sensitive to geopolitical risks. For instance, Boeing, a major U.S. Exporter to China, felt the effects of the United States of America, the U.S.-China trade war, when Chinese tariffs impact its sales. This wasn't just a business issue. It became part of the larger trade negotiations between the two economies, illustrating how private companies can be entangled in international political conflict. We look at why government to business or G2B collaboration and engagements in foreign policy implementation is critical to foreign policy. So the picture says it all. This is Prime Minister Marape during the Australia PNG Business Forum engagement earlier this year. So we look at the enhancing policy development. Collaboration between governments and businesses lead to more effective and informed policy-making processes. When you look at enhancing innovation, strong partnerships encourage innovation by combining resources and expertise from both sectors. When we look at addressing global challenges, joint efforts help tackle complex global issues through shared responsibility and collaborations. So we look at global standardization efforts, where new international frameworks seek to unify corporate policies across countries for consistent ethical standards. When we look at promoting ethical practices, regulations encourage businesses to adopt ethical practices respecting human rights worldwide. When we look at sustainability in foreign policy, we look at sustainability principles that are integrated into corporate foreign policy to support long-term global well-being. When we look at transparency, we look at clear and open communication that can build trust and ensure actions align with public interest. When we look at stakeholder dialogue, just like the one in the picture, we look at engaging diverse stakeholders, which can foster collaboration and shared understanding of goals. Then when we look at accountability mechanisms, we look at how implementing accountability can ensure adherence to global norms and responsible contributions. So in conclusion, this brief high-level overview of the private sector's role in shaping foreign policy shows that the private sector plays a very critical role, an evolving role in foreign policy making. You see, by understanding its influence, the challenges and opportunities, governments and businesses can collaborate responsibly to shape effective and inclusive foreign policy. Understanding challenges and opportunities also allow better collaboration between governments and businesses, and responsible cooperation between governments and private sector fosters effective, inclusive foreign policy. So when we go back to examples, when we look at examples, let me see. When we look at the challenges between the company policy and national priorities, we have a very good example there in the Puma Energy's situation from 2023. Yeah? And this is a good, very interesting example because you have their need for foreign exchange to purchase raw materials to create to make fuel for aircrafts and the market. And then you have the government's need for the fuel to be done quickly so the trade can continue and business can carry on. So those are some very clear examples of the private sector's influence in international relations. So, Mr. Gerard, I'll stop there and then we can start the Q&A process. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ako, for a very brief and informative presentation. And I do agree with you. Apart from academia, the private sector is a really important stakeholder in our study of foreign policy. They also play a really pivotal or very strong role in foreign policy making and implementation as well. We'll go to our first person on the list. That's Jemima. We'll let Jemima first, since Jonathan is not in the meeting room.
Thank you, Mr. Yara, and thank you, Mr. Ako, for your presentation. I have one question in regards to Mr. Ako's presentation. My question is, how can PNG's policymakers safeguard national interest while engaging with powerful multinational technology firms?
Gemma, thank you for that. Can I repeat the question? How can PNG's policymakers safeguard national interests while engaging with multilateral MNCs? Am I correct? Okay, I'll answer it according to how I heard it. How can PNG's policy makers safeguard national interests while engaging with multinational corporation? Those it can be done through engagements like the Business Council's engagement with the Australia PNG Business Council. Now, when that happens, the organizers usually invite government representatives and CEOs of the multinational corporations to come in and talk on and give their views on issues on hand, issues that are important that are of beneficial considerations for both economies or both membership. The Business Council of Papua New Guinea has an interest in system of engagement with government. It's called the Private Government Connect process, or PGK. The PGK process has been in place for the last 5 years, since 2021. And that allows private sector and government to engage on 3 occasions a year. So the first time they engage will be through the Prime Minister's Back to Business Breakfast. That's run through the Business Council with their corporate sponsors, and that's when the Prime Minister is invited to come and talk about the country's economic outlook that year or coming year, and how it intends to work forward in collaboration with the business community. Now, then during the second PGK is usually covers national content. Okay, and then the third PGK covers the Futures Forum, where both government and businesses talk about digitization. Now, below the PGK process, there's also another level called the Government to Business Consultative Forum, and that covers the departmental heads and also with business. So in that consultative forum, there are three task forces. There's a task force on economy, there's a task force on economy, task force on business protection, and task force on MTDP4. So those task force meet, and below those task force, I think there are 9 working groups that cover a wide array of activities that happen in the economy, and those are also its membership is made up of government officials and business. So there is one way of PNG's policymakers safeguarding national interests with regards to business. Because what happens is that any issue is always escalated upwards into the consultative forum, and then if need be, there is a cabinet information paper written by the government side to inform cabinet that businesses are concerned about this issue, and these are the answers. How can we rebalance or realign the current policies to meet those? So that's one way of answering your question on that. I hope that that answers it.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Ako.
Jemima, that's all. Sorry for the mix-up. I was looking at the week 3 and 4 tally. You do have 3 more questions to ask, and I think 5 more.
I think that's all from me.
All right, thank you. We'll move on to our next person on the list. Jonathan Kuna. Is Jonathan in the meeting room? If not, we move on to Kappa. Kappa, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Yagira, and also thank you, Mr. Ako, for that presentation. I will just dive straight into my questions. I have some questions from the previous lecture, I believe in week 4. Yeah, I'll just ask a question regarding the carrots and sticks. That was very interesting. Honestly, I found it very interesting. So I have a question because there's a lot of points you raised in there, and yeah, so I will start with that. So regarding the lesson on carrots and sticks, Mr. Ako, you made a mention of the labor mobility program, which is something that I've always been like very interested on reading the news articles about. So since the recruitment of locals to PNG, the locals of PNG to go the labor mobility programs, especially in Australia and in New Zealand, there has been like a lot of critiques, especially like, like from the civil towards the government. And so like one of the well-known remarks is that many claim that it is a daylight slavery where the unemployed population are sent overseas as fruit pickers instead of cultivating our own agricultural sector. What do you say about this as an expert in light of the project that the government sees as a potential economic driver? That's my first question. So I'll let you answer that under the labor mobility program, because you made a mention that it's one of the incentives that multilateral companies, multilateral governments, like they come in collaboration to provide that to us. So I'll let you answer that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for it. Yeah, it's an incentive because it takes out the burden of unemployment from government. Now there are requirements in place, and I am sure that there is always consultation between the companies and between the receiving companies and their organizers who liaise with our organizers here and the applicants. So those talking about I'm not defending the companies on these allegations of daylight modern slavery or what, but I'm sure that there are requirements in place which someone is to see, someone is to abide by before the recruitment process happens. So we will have to touch base again on that because that's one of the sensitive issues going on at the moment. The people are claiming there are claims that people have been recruited and they go down and they do not go to the places they were earmarked to go to in the first place. So that would be something which the receiving companies and those companies that are organizing the labor mobility process to answer. So I'll put it there. But on the other side, there are also companies, Austrian companies that I know of who are providing certificate 1, 2, 3, or sometimes 4 for their employees. So that's one of the main incentives of that one. You have, like I mentioned earlier on, you from Hanover, you have boys coming back and taking care of their traditional obligations. Some have built houses for their parents. Some have come back and done bride price. Others have continued to perform well down in Australia to warrant extensions. Well, of course, others have gone and they have not called Bagarapi Mola. The weather wasn't good to them, so most have come back. Some have come back, but others have continued to strive. So those are the incentives that are available through the carrots on LMU.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Ako, for clarifying on that. All right. Moving on to my second question and my last question. This is in regards to the presentation that you have just done for this afternoon. I just want to ask if the private sector is an internal or external stakeholder in this discussion, and how much level of influence interest does the private sector have in the foreign policy framework?
I was waiting for someone to ask that.
Oh my goodness.
The consultations would have covered the current foreign policy consultations would have covered the private sector through the participation of Mr. Doveri Henao, who was the former executive director of the Business Council. Now, the question now is, like the academia, whether they went out talking with the Business Council, with the Manufacturers Council, which I am sure they would have. I'm hoping they did because they didn't talk with the academia, and I'm not sure whether they were very selective in talking with the our private sector. But on a more positive side, the Business Council of Papua New Guinea in the last 5 years already had its strategic intent in place. It had all its systems in place to encounter that. So they usually have the regular consultative forum meeting, which is held once a quarter, and you will see Secretary Trade and Investment. The consultative forums are always chaired by Chief Secretary and President Susil, and in there they will discuss foreign currency shortage all the way to trade obstacles and all those things. Those are discussed. So based on those, information should be readily available for any policy configuration. So I would say yes, consultations happen for this current foreign policy white paper drafting, but how regular and how deep the consultations went is something we have to ask going forward.
Thank you, Mr. Ako, for answering my 2 questions.
Thank you, Kapayam Tasola. All right, let's move on to
Yes.
okay, thanks again, and thank you, Mr. Ako, for providing the answers. Our next person on the list is Irene. Irene, let's listen to you, and then we'll go to Stella Marie.
Thank you, Mr. Yegira and Mr. Ako, and good afternoon to everyone. I have 4 comments and 4 comments to make and 4 questions to ask. So I'll start with the comments. So 2 comments are in regards to the presentation of the roles of academics versus practitioners in foreign policy making, and 2 comments were based on the topic foreign policy at independence. So my question is on the point that Mr. Ako raised on the internship program as a pathway to enter the PNG Foreign Services. So I agree with this point because when internship programs are initiated, interns gain hands-on experience in the world of international relations. I mean, not just international relations, but in the working environment. It enhances their skills, both soft and hard skills, and it creates a pathways for them to create professional networks that will assist them in the long run. So networking is also very important in the working environment. It is important because it will open doors to new opportunities, increasing knowledge and skill sharing. It builds reputation, and I believe it also creates a support system where you support others and they support you. Hence, internship programs should be created more often. My second comment is about, or is on the point that you raised in your presentation about practitioners of diplomacy are not interested in what academics say. So in my personal view, I think practitioners should not ignore what academics have to say. I agree with what you mentioned that one cannot exist without another. Now, I stated practitioners should not ignore academics because realistically, practitioners are usually busy and may miss new ideas. So they should often hear what academics have to say, because when working together, they will help to develop better foreign policies for the betterment of our nation. My third comment is that the nation's universalism foreign policy, friends to all and enemies to none approach, is that, from my perspective, it means that our state will remain neutral and have no enemies or to be friendly with other states. But it can also be complicated because when big global issues arise, Papua New Guinea might find it difficult to take a strong stance without upsetting some of its partners. My fourth comment is that I also agree with what Mr. Ako stated on selecting a suitably qualified team made up of leaders and players to implement the game plan of the foreign policy. My thoughts resonate with Mr. Ako because a nation's foreign policy shows the world what a country stands for and what it wants to achieve. Therefore, it is vital to have qualified leaders and players because they will be the ones to represent the country on the global stage. They will also build and maintain international relationships, and they will secure strategic partnerships. It is also vital that they are trained so that the team has or is equipped with vast knowledge of global governance, negotiation tactics, public speaking, and other necessary skills for diplomatic arrangements. I have reached the end of my 4 comments. So I'll start with my first question. So my first question is, how did Asia's rapid industrialization after World War II influenced Papua New Guinea's foreign policy making? I'll give you time to answer that and I'll proceed with my other questions.
All right. No, you summarized the past lectures very well. We'll go to your question. How did Asia's rapid industrialization affect us? Because straight after World War II, the whole of Asia was during World War II. The whole of Asia was overrun by the Japanese. So immediately after the peace or the surrender, unconditional surrender was signed off in Tokyo Harbor, I think. The U.S. and Japan immediately went into, well, the U.S. especially went into reparations now, and as reparations were being done throughout Asia, most of the old colonialism was been done away with too. So the Asians, because they had they already had an existing structure in place, right from China, from Korea, you had their own internal politics, which would lead to the Korean War in the 1950s. In China, straight after the war, you had the Civil War that came up, and then when that resulted in Chiang Kai-shek moving across to Taiwan, and in Thailand, the same was happening. In Cambodia, in Cambodia, they were all moving. Indonesia also had their war of independence against the Dutch around that same time. So they had their structures in place, nearly 20 to 30 years before we came up. So while that was happening, while that was happening, we will also realize that the UN had been formed straight after the war, and it looked at decolonization. So all that was happening around its region, which was the two reports or the two fact-finding visits by the IBRD and the FABA report outcomes, all pushed to having Papua New Guinea secure self-government quickly. So all those direct influences of reparation indirectly affected Papua New Guinea's gaining of independence quickly. Of course, you had the domestic Australian and Papua New Guinea politicking happening, but all that affected PNG on the road to independence quickly. And then you mentioned it very well that the universalism had to happen because we were a new country. But even today, most experts now in Papua New Guinea, the most experts in foreign policy, and I mean experts as in former ambassadors and former Department of Health, are not looking very favorably on the universalism approach, still talked about by government. They think that some security experts feel that that's a sign of weakness when we have a lot of resources to use as our own sticks and stones, our own sticks and carrots to influence our own foreign policy. We have all these things as part of our arsenal, and yet we are very traditional in our approach to international relations. So I'll answer your first question like that, Irene. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ako. So to my second question is, during the formulation of the universalism foreign policy, in what ways did the Asia's cultural and institutional diversity create opportunities or challenges for Papua New Guinea's diplomacy?
Personally, I think that the formation of ASEAN, was how do you say it? The example used. The formation of ASEAN was the example used by our was not hold on, not the example used, but the example seen by the UN and the powers around that area at that time, that countries could work together. Newly independent countries could form organizations and have a common priorities to work on. So the formation of ASEAN supported, helped push. I feel that the formation of ASEAN helped push Papua New Guinea along the way to independence. But the formation of ASEAN showed that these were countries formerly under colonial rule, and now they became independent, and hastily they organized themselves and then organized themselves into a regional organization to push a common agenda. And you will realize that once they formed, once these countries were becoming independent and on their way to form an ASEAN, they were also already trading among themselves. They went back to their old roots, went back to all traditional historical trading arrangements, picked on those, and they started trading among themselves. That's the reason why during the lecture I said that by the time we became independent, international trade was far, far away from our minds. While all these other countries, Asian countries, we had become independent in the 60s or earlier than that, they were already trading among themselves and setting up foundations to trade with bigger economies. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Ako. So to my third question, from your experience, given the friends to all and enemies to none approach, does the foreign policy make the nation vulnerable to exploitation by larger nations, or does it strengthen its diplomatic position?
A foreign policy is a game plan to win, which means that it must strengthen its diplomatic position. If there are vulnerabilities in it, then that shows that the game plan was weak. Why? Because all consult widely. There were some consultations which would have resulted in stronger ideas, but they did not touch those, which is the reason why the plan is weak to implement, and there will be chinks in the line to be exploited by other bigger economies. Because once we're looking at setting up a foreign policy, that requires in-depth thinking by all sectors, just like what we mentioned on the private sector, briefly on the private sector outlook of foreign policy. You need to consult widely. That's the reason why you will see that when you look at the NRL, you see that they have the coach sitting there together with 1, 2, 3, or even 4 advisors around him, because those people have been brought in because they're experts in defense, experts in attack, experts in wrestling, experts in kicking goals. They have all been brought in purposely to support the head coach, come up with a proper plan to win week in, week out. If it's a one-man show, then you imagine you yourself is coaching team A, while team B has about 6 or 7 advisors around it. You will lose every time. Even you look at Wayne Bennett and you look at Craig Bellamy. Even though you will not see them surrounded by people, if you read their books, they have people around them. If you read Craig Bellamy, every end of the year, he sends his senior players out to the Osiru clubs to learn kicking drills, to learn other defensive things which can add more advantage to his team. Or they go up to the soccer clubs up in Europe, in England. They send people he sends his people up to the NFL to look at that particular edge to win. And he says that, and I can quote that from he says that the English and European soccer are decades ahead of the NRL in terms of medical research. You look him. So people are now researching if you have injury, what you should do to make that injury well quickly, heal that injury. What type of food? No can kai. I was a good mate with the late Kato Otio, and I was asking him one time when he came back from Canberra, I asked him, hey, Katsi, tell me, what do you do there? Mangi place, and he was already talking about all scientific name, knee, elbow, what vegetables, and protein, all this. And I was so impressed, and I was so happy that this village boy went and was being taught something by the Australian dietitians or nutritionists on what not to. So I asked him, so if you're supposed nibli bagara, what? And then he says, when your knee is bugged, this is what you don't need, because time you can this like kai, and by producing this like an effect where go and inflame him injury blue. Then not to come up all right. So you see, those are the edges which game are put into game plan to win. So we need to consult widely. I know, the expertise is there, but you need to consult widely. You look at you look at the that movie about the 300 Spartans and the pass at Thermopylae. Kind game plan to 7 man go now, all block stuff, yeah. Only for one little farmer from the Spartan side, go to patients and talking about kin. You plus strong stuff, but iga to click boost track can lead him to come to backside na take him all. You look him. So if they had consulted widely, they would have found that boost track quickly. But because they were so powerful and they thought that their massive force could just crush through the defenders into Sparta, They couldn't find until the Spartans themselves were betrayed by one of their own. But that is what I mean by consulting. When you consult, you portray trust, and you portray ownership in that particular plan. People will own it. Because plan lo mipla sin down na walking. You receive more man out. People won't mind that, how the plan goes. So it is very important that you need to have those plans in place and consult widely. Even ask the lowliest of person you do not consider, because he or she would have seen something which majestic, eye blue, or looking. A bit of humbleness would be proper in place too. Am I right, huh?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Ako. To my fourth and final question. So Papua New Guinea is about to celebrate 50 years of independence, which is a major milestone that reflects its journey as a developing nation. So given that Papua New Guinea will be celebrating its Golden Jubilee, in the context of the country's stagnant development, do you agree that the universalism policy has successfully driven the nation's development?
The universal policy in the Marape government, you mean? Note that the universal policy was superseded by the active and selective engagement in 1981, 1982. So the current government came into power in 2019, I think. So they did not talk about their friends or enemy to none intent, strategic intent, until 2022, when our lecture started, if I can say that. When our lecture started and we started talking about foreign policy, this and that, that's when the idea of friends or enemy. But like I said, it depends on the leader, the government, and how they view their interpretation of the friends to enemy to none. And it's all public how we have advance or progress in the last 5, 6, or last 10 years is public. Experts have come up with their data and their statistics in terms of GDP and GNP and foreign exchanges and all that. And we ourselves are feeling the challenge, but not very well that most of or half of that challenge, half of the economic challenges we are facing now are also caused internationally by market prices of resources, commodity prices. Those are all done, so there must be a balance in place. And if you look at the report, the budget 2025-2024 budget report, it shows that we have actually made progress in terms of all cutting down on our debts. There's still a lot there, but progress has been made, and we have made savings to cut down the. So, according to the report, according to the 2024-2025 budget report, we are on target to achieve what the government hopes for by 2027 and beyond of a non-deficit budget. So in terms of the friends to enemy to none, like I said, it's up for interpretation. And I am sure that with what we have, and if we start becoming selective in our approach, we will still progress. Because we now have, we now publicly have a lot in our bilum than what we had in 1975. And what we had in 1975, not very well at all, or plantation owners below pre-1975, all let's have it. Now, we all know who the plantation owners were from. And when you look at most of this, when you look at the service industry, which we have now, the tourism, the banks, the also something, yeah, they were all established by our colonial masters. And now all stuff, you have the ANZs, you have the Westpacs, and all banks for Australians have all put him up. And those are they make up the service industry, and they've been there pre-independence and all stuff yet. So it's a good question for you and I to ponder on whether a friend to enemy to none is a good way of putting it. But like I mentioned earlier on, experts today, even as we speak, experts today think that it portrays weakness. Experts in security say it portrays weakness. Others are saying that no, we are a small country, we have to be realistic and we have to balance. But you only balance things suppose you know what to something. You got resources, you pull up, people are going to come to you for your resources. So you have the upper hand to leverage whatever it is. So then it goes, when you're talking about leveraging, it goes back to how well we did the game plan. And note that game plans must be implemented by players. Going back to the NRL example again. So game plans are implemented by players, and they make sure that the suitably qualified player runs onto the field. All man injured, don't allow him to go. So we watch NRL every day. So when you watch NRL every day, you can see. Have you noticed? I'll say it again. I say it all the time. I'll say it again. Have you noticed when it comes to before kickoff or during halftime? Did you count the number of support staff together standing around among the players? There are about 20, 21, 20, sometimes 30. Have you ever wanted one and walk blow? All their role fits in to that game plan. 4 or 5 years ago or 6 years ago, the Sydney Roosters held a big workshop. Let's call it a workshop. Pre-season workshop where they brought in everyone who was part and parcel of the vehicle, from the car park attendant, from the cleaner, from the everyone, all coming. There was a number on the wall which all Boston will put in a big screen. I'm not pretty. I can't remember what the number was, but I think let's say 701. Let's use the word number 701. So it's a number 701. I'll put in the big screen. Now, the whole staff of the Roosters came, the whole organization. But me to Walkman the Roosters come. Now, what Walkman come? Na stand up staff the stage, start in the meeting place. They brought in that 25, 30 men squad blown or put him all on top of the stage. Now, time put him all on top of the stage, finish or stand up. Then CEO will come na talk him online, stand up the stage. And to you look in this line below Yupla, referring to the staff. These are the 701. Now remember, 701 is just a number I'm using. These are the 701 staff who make you run onto the field to play 80 minutes. So you look in. What I'm trying to say, my point is that the game plan, Sydney Roosters, was consulted widely, and it was made up of 701 qualified team members to make him all win. They were the ones who, after all halftime, will come. Total finish on them coach. Now, when they went back to play, they were the ones who went up and cleaned the Warren or something. They were the ones who cleaned those up. They were the ones who make sure that the names of the players in their lockers are done properly. They were the ones who make sure that the car park is clean. They were the ones who made sure that the buses run on time between the car park, the public bus stop, and field. All those things make what the club tick, make the club tick. So you can't have a game plan you missing out one or two components or stakeholders based on the Sydney Roosters example. And by failure, imagine having imagine instead of 701, they had 695 because 6 man also look out him gate blog or Carlo Parker, only invite him all come. Or they forgot all about them. Then the VIPs of the other teams won't have car parks to park. Now that will cause issues. Or whatever meetings they come up with. So game planning is always important. And once you have a foreign policy intent, you must make sure that you have a team. For instance, the whole 24 of you are here because you have a game plan, and your game plan is to to become international relations graduates. That's your game plan. That's the reason why you are here. You've been part of the lectures in semester 1. You're now part of this Pasada. That's your overall game plan. Okay, and nothing is going to change it. And Mr. Edgar and I are important parts to your game plan. If one of us are not in, game plan, because you are missing out on 1, 2, or 3 lectures, which will not bode well for you along the way. Yeah. And me too, you see, it is my game plan to be part of your success, which is the reason why I am committed to this role. So it is important that whatever foreign policy intent we come up with must rhyme with the times. So we can debate on and on and on about the friends to enemy to none, but if the government says that that's the intent we must have, then that's the intent we must have. But as the players now, you run into the field, you decide how looking. If the coach said to play the ball to the left, then how the halfback organizes how many tackles, how many hit-ups, how many carries to go, and play the field now. You could either kick the ball that way to bring that game that way, or you could do it after 5 tackles. And you now, as the player. I'll stop there.
All right, thank you, Irene, and thank you, Mr. Ako, for your answers and for your questions and comments. And yeah, there are 2 schools of thought. One, we see the friends to all enemies to none as a principle of foreign policy, and some they see friends to all enemies to none as a foreign policy itself. But like Mr. Ako rightly said, we had the foreign policy review in the 1980s, 79 it started. In the 1982, we had the white paper on active and selective engagement, and we changed our foreign policy direction, but there's still some confusion. Some people think that it's still active, and others say that it's not. And like I said, there are 2 different schools of thought. One group, we say that it's a principle, that it guides our action as a state, and others, they think it's a foreign policy, and it's something that we are practicing, that guides our. So it's confusing, but it's worth the debate. We can continue the debate. Our next person on the line is Stella Marie. Stella Marie, please go ahead.
I'm on. Good afternoon, Mr. Yagera, Mr. Ako, and everyone. I have 3 comments and 3 questions to make. So I will start with my 2 comments from last week's presentation. So in Mr. Ako's presentation, he stated an article, and in that article was quoted by Paul Sharp, and he stated, and I quote, "Generally speaking, practitioners of diplomacy are not interested in what the people who study international relations have to say about them. When they do glance at an academic book on diplomacy, they will often be puzzled as to why so much time and space was required to make this point in question. So from my own understanding, I think that practitioners are advocates for change on policy frameworks, and they are more into carrying out actions than just writing." On to my second comment, it is based on middle ground. So practitioners show up for professional conventions and make inputs. Meanwhile, academics analyze and frame the practitioners' input. So I think that when practitioners and academics work together, their work are combined together, and that is where middle ground is. Yeah, so that's my 2 comments from last week. For this week, I have 3 questions and 1 comment from Mr. Ko's presentation on Tuesday. So my question First question reads, since there are many definitions of foreign policy, what is your personal definition of foreign policy?
Sorry, Stella, I didn't catch you. What is I missed one word. Could you repeat?
All right. In your presentation, you stated that there are definitions of foreign policy. So personally, what is your definition of foreign policy? Yes.
My definition of what should be a foreign policy today.
Yes.
I would personally, I would go with selective engagement. Maybe in another word, but it should be something like that, where because of the resources we have now, we could become the balancing place where people or economies around us we could become something like the junction where economies around us on their way to trade or to interact with the other economies will come through us, and we organize for them that particular zone to look after their businesses. I'd do that. I have my own interpretations of French to elements to none too. So yeah, I'll answer it that way.
All right. Now on to my second question. What were some successful achievements under Prime Minister Chen's selective and active engagement foreign policy that you would know of?
The main one would be the Common Forces quelling of the Vanuatu crisis in 1980. That came earlier than it was like 2 years before the foreign policy on active but selective engagement. But that kind of set the stage for what to come later on. And then based on that, the bureaucrats started talking, and beyond that, it started the conversation. The conversation on having a Melanesian organization started, and then they started talking about the MSG until it came into fruition maybe a decade or so later, from 1980 or 1982. That would be the success part of it. And then based on that, I think Chen continued on with another intent of working the Pacific. And then Prime Minister Winty came up with Look North, and then Chen came up again with Look North, Work the Pacific. But those intents were based on the selective engagement one. They were not white papers themselves. So those are the examples I can think of at the moment.
All right. For my third question, PNG's foreign policy French was shaped by Factor 1, according to your presentation, which is Asia's political, cultural, and institutional diversity. Hence, based on your thoughts, how do you think Australia reacted to this, as it was PNG's colony during that time?
Repeat the last part of your question again. I didn't hear it. Sorry.
Yeah, hands up. Based on your thoughts, how did Australia react to this? Yes, it was a colony of PNG during that time.
Yeah. Okay. Note very well that Australia was not directly affected by World War II. Okay. Indirectly, yes, Salim soldiers blame go out, and I think Darwin was bombed by the Japanese. I'm not really sure, but they were not really affected. So their factories and their industries were as they were, apart from the financial crises and stuff that happened during the war and the results of that. So that was they were part of that regional integration effort in Asia. because they could see that Asia had cheap labor to fuel their industries. So I'm looking at it in two separate. They're not connected. Because why I'm saying they're not connected, because if the UN FABA reports had not, those two reports had not come in by the UN in the 1960s, then they would not have been encouraged to give us independence quickly. Okay. Now with the Southeast Asia, or not Southeast Asia, with the Asian states, they were already trading among themselves. And Australia, the US, and all the others, they were also part of the trading system. So they were benefiting. It was in their interest to nurture free trade or regional integration, economic integration. That was the point I was trying to raise during the lecture.
Okay. Okay, for my comment, it's just one only for Tuesday's presentation, is that it is based on PNG's first foreign policy, friends all, enemies to none. So this policy is for international basis and it is doable. And yeah, according to my research, I said that PNG does not really have enemies with other countries. Yes, I feel that even though PNG practices it on an international level, it does not practice it internally or within the country, as there are a lot of regionalism and even some provinces want to break away from the country. So yeah, my comment is based on that, and I just wish that somehow there should be a policy in place for all the provinces in PNG to be friends to all and enemies to none. Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
That's
Thank you.
yeah, that's a very interesting view of looking at it, and I thank you for that. It should be done domestically too. I agree.
Yeah, Stella Marie, very interesting suggestion or comment you made. Okay, thank you, Stella Marie. We now listen to Kaylin.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I have a total of five questions and 2 comments to make. I'll go with the questions first. The first question that I would like to make is, whilst doing some research, I found out that one particular innovation in ensuring the robustness of foreign relations is the mandatory use of national interest analysis. Now, in countries such as Australia and New Zealand, NIA is built into parliamentary procedures to assess the viability of multilateral or bilateral agreements, which is a democratic check on executive decision making. Now, I believe that it is a process that PNG would greatly benefit from introducing to. My second comment is, I understand that a role of the Foreign Affairs Department is to protect and promote PNG's national identity, sovereignty, territorial integrity, security. However, due to the ongoing illegal smuggling and fishing activities in the PNG waters and borders, I see that a lot still needs to be done by the Department of Foreign Affairs in order to tackle the issue at hand. Okay, on to my 5 questions. My first question is, how effective is PNG's use of economic statecraft compared with other Pacific Island countries? I'll let Mr. Ako answer the question before I move on to the next questions.
Thank you, Kaylin. I think he's looking for a PowerPoint, so we give him a bit of time to plug in his computer and then he'll be able to provide an answer.
Found it. Okay, please go ahead with the question again.
My first question is, how effective is PNG's use of economic statecraft compared with other Pacific Island countries?
Our use of economic statecraft was came into the fore in the 1990s when under Prime Minister Chen's look north and work the Pacific, and the Pacific plan which he had, which allowed us to give grants and educational aid to students from the Solomon Islands and Vanuatu who were brought in on scholarship to study at the our educational institutions. However, I am not really sure how effective that carrots were in international multilateral engagements. Okay, because when we look at it, when we look at the our international relations of the 1990s, there were a lot of issues covering them, particularly during the Bougainville years. That was during the time of the crisis also. So financial situation was affecting our economy, and also you would have realized that the Bougainville crisis left a huge financial dent in the other sectors as well. And the government had a lot of thinking to do, balancing act to do, because it had to support our continuous education. It had to support the health system in place with whatever money was available to do that. So in addition to that, and the Pacific Plan too. So that was the balance, I guess, government was trying to cover with regards to the carrots and sticks and the economic statecraft. But we did not play that much in terms of economic statecraft, because the financial, the Bougainville crisis not forced but pushed our hand into looking at more aid. So we were actually allowing others to, allowing other development partners to exercise their economic statecraft on us. That's how I see it.
Thank you, Mr. Ako. My second question is, what would be a classic example of PNG's successful economic statecraft?
From my own experience, I would say that one successful example of that would be the utilization of training programs both in the military and in education for our Vanuatu friends, and later on with the Solomon Islands, that worked on towards the establishment of the MSG. That supported it, because the MSG was set up. The story of the setting up MSG was done up in Goroka between our top bureaucrats. I can remember reading about former Secretary Building, and then the Vanuatu and the other gentlemen from the Solomon Islands. They set it up. But when you look at those three economies, PNG was the only one with the money to support that, in addition to 8 partners. So that balanced out. I would think that the establishment of the MSG, which was an idea talked about or pursued, an idea put forward by Papua New Guinea and those 2 other officials, was utilized through our successful quelling of the Vanuatu crisis. And the fact that we were putting money where our mouth was would also equate as part of economic statecraft on our part. The only sad aspect of it is we did not maintain that advantage we had going forward. And I know other stuff came in. You know, you had the West Papua issue, and Vanuatu is always one of the most outspoken Pacific Island countries when it comes to the West Papuan issue. And we ourselves have signed off bilateral agreements with our Indonesian counterparts, saying that those are all sovereign issues, domestic issues for one country, so we can't voice on them. But Vanuatu goes ahead and voice them, and so once they do that, then we are not in the same wavelength now. So that economic statecraft and the carrots which we used to use as part of that 20, 30 years ago are no more.
Thank you, Mr. Ako. My third question is, what were some key events that influenced PNG's foreign policy during the independence period?
I myself don't see any key events. The mere fact that we were a new country influenced our foreign policy of friends to all enemy to none straight after independence. As a new country, we need to become known. So you can't become known if you make enemies out of other countries. So that's the reason why the universalism approach happened, which will enable us to go and sign a total of 60 bilateral agreements with 60 countries. We became members of community boards, multilateral organizations, because we were a new country. We need to be part of any clubs that were happening around the world. So by 1982, the leaders realized that we can determine who our friends are. We've been playing for the last 5 years now. We have experience. So that's when the 1982 foreign policy selective engagement came up. Now, you fast forward it about 45 years. And then ourselves, when we look at 1982 right up to 2025, how we have tracked in terms of international relations, in terms of economic development, in terms of our membership to international organizations, how have we tracked? And then based on that, we determine the next 50 years going forward, what type of plan should we put to go in place to give us that edge over that. Now, you had me mention about the NRL coaches surrounded by the experts. That doesn't stop us from engaging more proactively with our bilateral partners. You know, having some bilateral partnerships more stronger than the others. You know, when we look at our hosting of APEC, we chose only 8 economies to support us. Because all the others, mostly all South American economies, all Sampla, they kept a distance. So we were not going to go begging for assistance from them. So obviously we had Australia to look to, Indonesia, those were our main neighbors, which we went to them first. We went to them. None of them approached us. We had to go to them out of respect. People go to the house door, ask him Halivim blood. And that provided much respect to us as a team. And once that started happening, they went ahead telling the other economists that, listen, online is short or something. So maybe approach Lahui and Ivan and ask them whether they require some assistance on this, and they will tell you, and then you can move forward on them. So that's how when I'm talking about the coach supported by his experts, that's how that system works. Others will talk on your behalf. You don't need to ask them. All but talk. So once we started going to our APEC meetings, we were surprised to see other economists come and say, Lahui, I want to talk to you on this. Then we realized that, our other friends must have told them. So that's how people, even we ourselves did the same too with others. No, we went ahead and offered our support in 2019 to Chile. Australia. I think our Indonesian colleagues went and told Chile, go and talk to Lahui and Ivan. They know how to, they experience firsthand the non-consensus of a leader statement, leaders communicate. Go ask them. But this liner, they had a bit of attitude, so they never came and asked us. So when the push came to shove in Singapore, we blocked them off. So that's how that's the reason why we need to surround ourselves with like-minded economists who think along the same lines, and only that can only happen if your foreign policy intent align one time blower. If both of you have different directions, and it will be hard to align. Okay, Kaylin?
Thank you. My second last question is, what were the long-term effects of PNG's foreign policy choices?
That's a very very good question, because our foreign policy choices will determine how well we maintain our bilateral relations with our bilateral partners. You look at the example of the late Grand Chief Sir Michael being asked to take his shoes off at an international airport, despite our bilateral relations. That's how difficult it is for bilateral plans to shuffle all the way down to the ground level for people to do. I mean, for goodness sake, this was a prime minister of a sovereign country, and to have a customs official ask him to take his shoes off so that he can be scanned. The question was that, why wasn't everyone who was traveling with him that they take all the shoes off and done the same too, instead of complaining? You know, when I asked a couple, when this was this issue was heard during one of the APEC years, and some people from the north told me, "Sapos happen lo mipla, mipo basinan lo floya." So you see, and yet we talk about our strong bilateral relations. And what happened when this issue was raised? They just pressed it on to them. Sorry, no more work block customs, now walking, all that excuses happened. So then, look, immediately the year after, the Moti case came up. Have you all read about the Julian Moti and all that? And you can see what Chief Somare did. You played go balance him. You played read him all background story and balance him. I mean, that's my personal view. You played some sublo me last year, so maybe fly money go not the country. Worry blue play. But those are just opinions. No, but you and I can set up our opinion, because and our outlook of how things might pan out, because that's what foreign policy is all about. You trying to determine the future, and gamble might not be the good way, but you gambling that this game plan is the best game plan to do to make you win. They are bilateral friends, but when you look at the actual point, is that these are bilateral friends. Time family, immediate family blocks in Bagarap, all become helping you on what. That's what you and I should be thinking about when we draft the foreign policy. The this foreign policy work, nemba karim investment come inside. This investment come, emba go help him a place to make him road or not. Emba help him place to make him housing or not. That's the first thing we should be thinking about. Now, suppose you let's look, go to all doctors association. Online never give him investment housing, all but put him on top of salt water. We all don't need him housing glemme. All because consult one them all experts. That's how I would look at it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ako. My last question is, what are some factors that influence the formation of foreign policy in PNG?
What are some of the factors that influence what? Can you repeat?
What are some factors that influence the formation of foreign policies in PNG?
The factors would include our development aspirations, how we want our development to move forward, our economic development aspirations, and which economy can provide much support in that direction. We can look at our social development aspirations and which economy can provide support in those directions. And our political aspirations in terms of, put aside political history for a moment and look at PNG as a standalone country trying to make provide development for all its people. What would you do? You look at your backyard and you have rich soil for agriculture. You look at inside your ground and you got gold, copper, oil, gas stuff. With all these things, how can you, what type of plan can you put? Because I believe in the saying that no man is an island, so no country is an island. All countries have bilateral relations that connect each other because not all countries are self-sufficient. There will be something which you will need because modern international trade has shown that kind of small keyboard blow laptop blow me is made by one country and one battery blow laptop is made by another country, and in order to do that you need to sign bilateral relations with those three countries to ensure that this is something must come to factory build by you competing on the laptop. So that we all understood that we have to have relationship with all the countries, but at the back of our mind we also know that we have these things in our bilum. So how well can we leverage what we have, lo bilum blame, lo advance in interest to family and community blame? That's the biggest thing. When you look at TV, when you look at Justin Olam's advertisement, when he starts talking about the community and your responsibility in the community, he gives us, that's a very strong message. Community em work blue, life blue. When I'm something working, me working the community blue. So that is the main idea which you and I are supposed to have when we are thinking about an overall foreign policy game plan for the country. We just can't go and talk about things which we dream of. When we have to talk about things we have, and when I go back to the force multipliers, you look when Dero set up the force, he looked at force multipliers himself, and PNG was a small country, but that this small country can only get the soldiers of the small army can only develop if they are taught by experts. That's the reason why he went around the world looking at military cooperation with a lot of countries to enable the vulnerable Papua New Guinea soldier to be trained. So that's where he came up with the understanding that when there is a sentry, because because of our capability, that you army blaming no bigla, this like guard there, but you give a machine gun to as a machine gun is a weapon to guard, not a rifle. Because rifle, I'm firing one bullet each. Give him machine gun, M1, so at least machine gun by rapid fire, so them can down him, plant him man more than rifle can knock him. You see, that was his mindset. A mindset blend. And with that type of mindset, you can know he was looking at force multiplier. You need a rifle that can fire multiple bullets in a minute to safeguard the area that person was guarding. Then a rifle which can fire only one bullet per time before the person is overwhelmed. But that's the whole point of the matter. We have to look at force multipliers to multiply our undertaking. When you are at home and you do realize that you short lump something, you do not stop on a suffer stuff, but you go out to neighbors or go to house, uncle, auntie, and go kai lo up. I'm normal. No one will chase anybody away if someone fronts up at dinner time. I'm normal. And that's how our life is. And that's how PNG is made up. And based on that, based on our that practice, we put that out. but in a more modern manner, just to safeguard our interests. That's how I'll answer your question.
Thank you, Mr.
Okay, thank you, Kellen. We are running out of time, so we'll have Crystal as our last person to share their comments and question, and the others will move to next Tuesday. So, Crystal, please go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you, Mr. Ako and Mr. Yudira for the discussion. Can you hear me? I have one comment and one question from last week's lecture, 3 comments for Tuesday's lecture, and 1 comment for today's discussion. And I have 5 questions. So my first comment, from the discussion last Friday session, I see that academics offer long-term strategic thinking while practitioners often focus on short-term outcomes shaped by political realities, and there's a gap between theory and practice in PNG's foreign policy. And there's more need for a deliberate collaboration between the academics and practitioners. And from Mr. Ako's comments last week, I think PNG's economic statecraft remains underdeveloped due to weak institutional coordination and limited policy integration between economic and foreign policy actors. And another comment on Lee Chan's foreign policy during his term as a prime minister in the 1980s. Sechens also pursued a pragmatic and economically driven foreign policy, which aimed at strengthening PNG's regional standing and promoting self-reliance. Like Chen's government promoted greater trade engagement, especially like in Asia, which likely helped PNG diversify its coffee export markets beyond traditional partners like Australia and Europe, which I heard from someone who played some role in the Chen government at that time. And to my other 2 comments, it's interesting how universalism approach in foreign policy wasn't just about diplomatic recognition, but also seemed to lay the groundwork for attracting international support for economic and development. And I noticed that PNG's foreign policy during independence focused a lot on neutrality and inclusiveness. Maybe that was a strategic way to avoid dependency on any single power while still seeking industrial support. So a comment for this discussion, it is certain that private sector involvement is important. However, without transparency and clear boundaries, there's a risk of foreign policy being used to serve narrow business interests rather than the national good. In PNG's case, where large multinational companies dominate sectors like mining and energy, there's potential for their corporate goals to clash with suitable foreign policy that focused on national goals. That's all for my comments. And to my question, for a newly established nation and as a national interest, security concern or regional security is a concern for a country like PNG, sharing border with Indonesia and West Papua. What role did regional security concerns such as tension in West Papua play in shaping PNG's foreign policy at independence?
Yeah, it did. Thank you for that. It did shape it. You will realize that during that time too, PNG went and became a member of the Non-Aligned Movement, NAM, NAM, It became a member of the non-aligned movement, also to support its stance as a friends to all, enemy to none. It also signed its bilateral agreement with Indonesia to ensure that there was an agreement in place to ward off any hostile intentions from across the border. Okay, so it's a signing of the NAM. It's membership of the non-aligned movement complemented its enemy friends to enemy to none intent to show that it was non-aligned to PNG was friends to all. It was aligned to everyone, and then that affected our foreign policy going forward. But while that was in the 1970s, while that was happening, you will also realize that the OPM were also pushing the agenda furiously. They wanted, you had the names like Jacob Pry, Otto Ondowame, later Seth Rumkorem. These were the people who were pushing, and they were coming into the border and they were meeting with our cabinet members. They were meeting with our cabinet members. You will realize that most of them were first generation or some second generation refugees who'd left the Indonesian side and to find safety in Papua New Guinea, and these were the people who have been utilized by the OPM movement to drive the agenda. In 1977, 78, there was an issue when the OPM provisional government was named, and five of those provisional government members' names were all permanent residents in Papua New Guinea, and that posed a huge problem, a diplomatic problem with the Indonesians, because the Indonesia was saying, okay, so what's some of them now? You're talking about us looking after our own domestic sovereign issues, and here you are. You have people, you have people residing in a country who are members of a freedom movement in our country. So issues like that, and there was also another incident where Seth Rumkorem was planning to assassinate the Governor General of Papua New Guinea, and Ted Diro had to go all the way up to the border to warn him not to do that. So you can see that that the friends to all, enemy to none was now starting to look negative on our part now, because other players were making use of that strategic whatever, but by saying that, look, you are friends to all, so you're supposed to be friends to us too. Maybe if we thought about it differently, then it would not happen that way. So maybe that was one of the reasons why said Julius said, listen, no, stop him. Let's look at our own friends and start selecting and actively engaging in with the real friends. All that. So that's one of the ways of answering your question, Pastor.
Thank you, Mr. Akua, for an interesting answer. My second question is, could you clarify what specific aspects of PNG's foreign policy were considered part of the game plan towards independence?
Could you repeat that slowly again, please?
Could you clarify what specific aspects of PNG's foreign policy were considered part of the game plan towards independence?
PNG did not have a foreign policy towards independence. All it could structure its plan towards gaining self-independence was Pangu's 8-point plan. It was based on that 8-point plan that I personally think that 8-point plan provided a foundation for the foundations for our national constitution. And that became was it 8 or 12 point? Anyway, the Pangu's policies became the preamble of our national constitution. It was only after independence that we started looking out we started taking international trade seriously. We started going out into the well. And in order to go out into the well, we needed a game plan. So the game plan that was used to go out into the well to make friends and sign agreements was the universalism agreement. Okay. Am I right?
Crystal, that's all, or you have some more questions? Okay, that's all. All right, so then it's 4 o'clock now. We'll stop here. I would like to thank Mr. Ako for his time, and once again, apologies to all of you. We started late, but it's good that we got the job done. And that's that. So we will upload the video for those who did not attend, so they can visit Mr. Ako's YouTube channel and then watch. And if you have any questions, we can continue the discussion. Like I mentioned earlier, my consultation hours are open as well, and you can ask questions to Mr. Ako during the online period that we have together. So we'll move the list, those who are yet to ask questions and make comments, we'll move that list to next Tuesday and we'll continue. And there'll be a slight change. I have to consult you people for next week, Thursday. Mr. Ako has an engagement on Friday, so we'll try to agree on a time slot next Thursday or Wednesday. So we'll confirm that and then let Mr. Ako know. But thank you, Mr. Ako, once again for your time, and also thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon. We'll meet again on
Thank you everyone
Tuesday.
for your patience. Thank you everyone for your patience. I apologize again for coming late. I'll try to be on time from next week onwards. Have a good weekend. Watch some more Raiders maintain him sport law. NRL.
Okay. And go the Broncos tonight. Okay.
All
All
right.
right.
Bye.